Hello, and welcome to my weekly love stream. I'm Dr. Taylor Burrows. Today's topic is the 7 pitfalls of bad relationships. So I've been asked this question a lot, kind of what are the red flags or what are the challenges that most relationships have to deal with? And a lot of these things come up in healthy relationships as well. But the difference is how they're dealt with. So in bad relationships, these things are going to be like kryptonite. They're just going to create so much conflict in bad relationships because either the persons individually aren't really developed or there's some sort of mismatch and one person cannot carry the relationship. So it's really important for both parties to be able to develop the skills in their relationship to get better at managing some of the conflicts or the themes that we're going to talk about. So feel free to chat. I might not respond to your comments, but you guys can talk amongst yourselves. I can always go through the comments afterwards and respond to you whenever I can. So thanks for joining me tonight. There's some information at the bottom in the notes if you want to reach out and speak to me privately if you don't feel comfortable saying anything in the public comments. But I'm coming to you live from South Beach in Miami, Florida. And it's about 6 p.m. here, so the sun is about to go down in a little bit. So I wanted to catch the rest of the light before it got dark tonight. And let's begin. Let's talk about these 7 pitfalls of bad relationships. In no particular order, really. I'll go through some of the simple ones first, and then we'll get to the heart of it as we dig into this topic. It may also be helpful if you just want to give me a thumbs up or let me know if everything is okay or if there's any issues with the media, with sound or anything like that. Just go ahead and give me a comment so I can maybe glance that and know. So the first one I wanted to talk about, the first pitfall, finances. Finances are a major issue in some couples. Thank you, Jonah. Thanks, Jonah. So finances sometimes can be a really difficult issue, whether it's, one person making a lot more money than the other person, having different spending habits. It could be, a lot of times there's anxiety about, whether you should have access to the same accounts. If some person came into the relationship a lot more well-off, well-organized with their finances, and then the other person spends much more money frivolously, then there might be some guardedness in one of let's say it's the husband who has, doesn't even have to be married, but let's say the man has more income, more sort of diversified income streams and stuff like that, and the woman could be more of a spender and she's not really keeping track of her finances. So that can create a lot of conflict on those types of values. So it kind of does seep into another one of these pitfalls about values, but let's just be specific about the finances. So in regards to this, it's really important to talk about finances and how you manage finances before you get into a serious long-term relationship, especially if you're living together. And if you're getting married, of course. But sometimes these things can creep up. They might not be that big of an issue in the beginning, but as life gets more complicated, things get more intense, then they can become more problematic. Maybe at first both parties don't really mind having separate accounts, but as they go on, they realize it feels a little bit odd or it's awkward and things are difficult to coordinate. So it comes up later when people build resentment about these types of things. Or, when it comes to the demise of a relationship, the premarital counseling or pre-relationship component, they maybe have different values around prenups. And so this can be a big issue where if you're planning to get married or talking about what your values are around prenuptials, it may stall the relationship from escalating from like a regular relationship dating wise to cohabiting to engagement to marriage because you don't agree on whether or not there should be a prenuptial arrangement. So this is also a financial issue. which can get really sticky. So if you don't share the same sorts of values and the same talking about finances and how to manage your money, then that can create a lot of disagreements. If one person is not willing to compromise or kind of follow the lead of the other person, if it's their strength, then you should actually consider doing things their way. If they're really good at managing their money, then why not let them take the lead on that and kind of do what they say? Now, the difference is if, you feel like you want to have your own kind of, account or allowance in order to spend the way that you want to spend without having to ask for permission. Now, that's totally doable, and that can be the resolution that a couple finds. Or it could be like a limit. Some people say as long as it's under $1,000 or $500, then you don't have to run it by me. That's fine. Go ahead and spend at your own leisure, and I'll trust you. So there's lots of embedded issues in each one of these issues. So they you have to look at them from a macro level as well. And they all kind of bleed into each other. So there's trust, there's values. It's not just about finances. But the problem is when you have two very different personalities, and I've come across this where maybe, like I said before, like maybe the female is more disorganized and the male is much more rigorous and structured and organized. And it's a bigger issue. It's a personality incompatibility. So we'll get to that. Number one, finances. So number two, another sort of simple one is household chores. So in this case, you don't even have to really officially live together. It can simply be, you come over or you spend a lot of time at someone's house, and if you're with them for a couple of months or more, then it begins to nag at you if they share or if they don't share the same sorts of behaviors, right? Like if you take care of the house differently. Oh gosh, there was something on Twitter today or this week about the toilet seat being up or down. So that's an example. It's not really a chore, but you can see it's kind of that nagging element of household basic things. So whether it's doing the dishes or picking up your clothes off the floor, making the bed, anything like that, taking the trash out, putting the toilet seat up or down. It's really, really petty. But it's true. When I was doing traditional marital therapy in my practice for 14 years, it was a very common issue that people would sit there and argue about for hours, not at one time, but over the course of their treatment. So why is this an issue? This is going to bleed into another one of these pitfalls, being the power struggle. So we can look at it at like the higher level of the power struggle, or if we just look at it from a chores level. It's this nitpicking conflict over these petty details about how you take care of your environment. And so what you will see is that each person, before they got into this relationship, they had developed their own sort of habitual patterns, right? Like hopefully you had some time alone as an individual to take care of yourself, to learn, get up in the mornings, go to the bathroom, put your clothes away, make the bed, make your coffee, put your food away, throw out the trash. All the basic things that a human being, adult, has to do in order to stay healthy and well and hygienic, right? And have a sanitary living environment. But oftentimes what happens is people aren't getting that necessary time alone of independence to learn all of those behaviors, to properly take care of themselves. Now, they could have like a college situation where they live with a lot of roommates, or they could live with their parents on an extended basis, like an extended timeline, or go back to their parents after college. And so never actually completely have to take care of themselves. They always were a little bit dependent on their parents or whatever the case may be, right? So if that happens and then you end up in a relationship and then the other person ends up kind of parenting you, that's never a good look. So I've talked about this before, and it's really important to make sure that you vet the person and you get to know the person well enough to see these habits before you fully commit to a person, and then maybe have to backpedal if they don't want to address these issues and they become deal breakers. I think it's just important to recognize that they don't have to be deal breakers, that you should be able to address these issues without them being like a kryptonite that's going to explode your relationship. They shouldn't be the ultimate demise necessarily. You should be able to overcome them. Each person should be able to change their behavior. And just because it's something that you're used to, that it's common, it's your default or your personality, doesn't mean it's not changeable. We can all change our personalities. Our personalities are fluid, they're flexible. Part of it is static, right? Like if you think about our default personality, that's kind of what personality is. It's without external influences. What is our comfort zone? So our personality is our comfort zone of behavior. But if we're motivated for whatever reason, whether it's a relationship, whether it's survival, we can change those things that typically define us. So if you're in a relationship and you recognize, well, I've been this way all my life, but it's clearly creating this problem in my relationship, so I kind of have to decide whether I want to change those things about the way that I, live my life. And you might just recognize it's not a battle that you need to fight. So then you learn to change it. And over time, you develop new patterns of behavior that then help to resolve the issues in your relationship. So that's the other one. The second one was chores. First one was finances. Now, a third one, let's just go back to compatibility, okay? So you might actually just end up picking the wrong person. And I've talked about this extensively too. A lot of times in marital therapy, my clients would, probably the vast majority of them would end up ending the relationship or separating, sometimes I don't see them to the entire end. They'll just sort of disappear. So I don't necessarily know what happens, but they were in a very conflictual stage in their relationship and seemed to separate or divorce. Not all the time. There are some success stories, but the vast majority of those that did end up in a bad situation ended up that way because they just picked the wrong person to end up in a relationship with. So don't pick the wrong person. By all means, it's so hard to fix, if not impossible, to fix that foundation if it's based on a flawed system. So especially if both parties aren't willing to make those changes. Like I said before, just now, personality is flexible if you're motivated to make those changes necessary, but not everybody is. So when I see couples, it's important for me to assess whether both parties are just as motivated to make changes or if it's just one person that wants to change and the other person's just kind of like digging their heels in and refuses and pointing the finger and saying, oh, it's them, they need to change, they're the one that's wrong. So when you are facing someone who you realize is not compatible with you or vice versa, right? Like if you just got with the wrong person, it can be very, very unnerving because you don't really want to lose the time investment that you've put into this relationship and the attachment that you've developed with this person, because there's probably love there and there's probably desire there. You've got like that chemistry, but it just doesn't make sense. It's just not a good fit. So that's why I talk about my formula for an ideal partnership. And I've talked about this before. It might sound familiar, but for those of you that haven't heard it, it's an ideal, that's a separate thing. So the formula for ideal partnership is logic plus desire plus love is an ideal partnership. And so this is an example of missing logic. And so logic is the compatibility, it's the shared values, it's the complementarity, it's the shared life vision and lifestyle preferences. So what that means, someone asked me the other day, what are lifestyle preferences? Well, it's basically the extension of personality. So as you mature, you kind of get into like a plateau of your own personal development, like let's say around 30. Or so, it could like be 28 and it could be 35, but let's just say around 30, you might kind of plateau in your self-development and you get fixed in your patterns of behavior. And so you decide, okay, well, I'm kind of like a homebody. I'm really comfortable with my routine, being productive. If you work, after work, I like to go to the gym. I'm very active. I like to be outside. I like to travel. Whatever those things are that you shape your life around, you want to have a partner that generally has a similar lifestyle. Now, it doesn't mean that you need someone who's exactly the same in regards to interests and activities, because you do want to have some kind of separation. You want to have some time apart, because that's going to help create a nice space, a breathing room, and it will also allow you to introduce a little bit of tension too, and a little bit of novelty, because you're getting some outside influences in a good way. Right? So in regards to the lifestyle, it's going to be more pervasive things that you've decided they're not flexible. So these are the inflexible things about your personality. I am going to eat healthy for the rest of my life. I have, I'm a gym person. I like to go outside and be active. I'm a family person. I have to see my family. I'm a church person. Those types of things. It's generally like a value system as well. So we're sort of lumping them all together in this one. And compatibility is also personality in a broader sense, like introversion, extroversion. And a lot of these things are not necessarily the same. Some of them are complementary, right? So you want to have a little bit of distinction between the two of you so that you are more attracted to each other. So you have to figure out which are the things that you need to be the same on and which are the things that you need to have variation on. And that's kind of where polarity comes into play as well. So when we talk about a feminine woman and a masculine man in a heterosexual relationship, that's something that will help create a very nice equilibrium overall. So we'll get to some of that too in a little bit. So that's when there's no logic involved in a relationship, or there's not enough. Like, let's say if we take the three elements, logic, desire, and love, you could have, like, let's say 1 out of 10. If like you really just love this person, that's that strong companionship, friendship, attachment bond with them. You're used to them being around, you do everything together, you talk to them, they're the only person that really matters to you, they're your best friend, that kind of element, right? So maybe that's like a 9. But, well, desire could be really strong too. So let's say desire would maybe a little bit less, maybe it could be a 7, and then the love is a 9. But then the logic, it could be, well, we really don't make a lot of sense. Maybe there's something really off about the two of you, that you act more like, it's hard to get desire and that together, so this might be a bad example. But if you get my drift, you can have, one thing may not be missing, but it might just be really, really low. And so you have to determine, what is that threshold? Like, how much desire do you need at a minimum? How much love do you need? And how much logic do you need? But there should be at least a threshold of all 3 that's met. And obviously this is not something that you quantify as you're dating and vetting someone and seeing if they're a good match for you. But you should intuitively be able to sort of read what's lacking. And when you recognize, okay, well, they don't want kids, so that's not going to work. We're not going to make any sense. That's definitely taking logic out of play. And so just saying, well, I love them, or we have really great sex and we have good chemistry, it's still not going to work. You have to say, you know what, this is the wrong person for my long-term life partnership. Maybe it's okay if you frame it as like a short-term relationship, but you know how tricky that is. You can't really end it very easily still. So you might just want to, get out of that relationship before it gets too embedded, and it'll be trickier to end later on. So that's the third one. Let's just recap. Number 1 was finances. Number 2 was chores. Number 3 is the wrong person, so not having that logic component. Number 4, why don't we talk about the power struggle now? So number 4 being the power struggle. That is a little bit about this. It's also, it has to do with this complementarity being off, right? So if the woman is not really feminine and the man is not very masculine, and the woman has more of a dominant personality rather than a complement to the man's, what's going to happen is they're going to butt heads, right? So this power struggle typically brings people into the counseling room because they just can't see eye to eye. The woman always wants to fight him on the decisions. She wants to be right, or she wants her way, or she's just constantly feeling like that he's trying to control her. He's a narcissist, and why can't she do what she wants to do? She's an independent, empowered woman. So that happens a lot in North America, and in sort of this sort of era, we're seeing a lot of that power struggle perpetuating throughout the longevity of a relationship. And so we were taught in formal education for this that it was a stage of relationship development. Now there shouldn't really be a power struggle stage if you vet properly. But let's say there is a period where there's more tension and less ease, because as you create that sort of nice balance with each other and that complementarity, you're going to notice that it's almost like dancing. Like there's a harmony, you feel in sync with each other. There's no power struggle. You're not fighting over things that are silly. You can just sort of address an issue and resolve it quite neutrally. And so that's what you want to see, but it doesn't mean that you want like a completely neutral relationship. A little bit of tension, a little bit of normal, decision making and conflict resolution is going to be really important, but it shouldn't feel like a power struggle, like you're fighting for a position in your relationship. It should be very clear that, well, in my belief system, the way that I work with couples is that the man is going to be more of the dominant element and the woman is going to be more of the complement to that. So if you're not bought into your male partner, right? Like if you vet for a man and you don't respect his vision and you don't admire his work and his way of doing things, then you're kind of setting yourself up, and you're probably going back to number 3 and being like the wrong person. So power struggle is also another reason that it's another pitfall. But now you start to see how they really do overlap. So number 4 was the power struggle. Number 5, sex. So variations in sexual desire is quite common in relationships that are bad and not really working well. So you really need to determine early on if you have that sexual chemistry. And again, that's going to be that complementarity and that polarity that's going to be magnetizing you to each other to begin with. But these things, they ebb and they flow, different things happen throughout the lifespan of a partnership, whether it's sickness, whether it's child rearing, whether it's just different stress levels. But in general, the norm of the relationship should be that you have constant sexual tension, not necessarily every single second, but it should be woven through the relationship so that you can kind of, flip pancakes and, flirt with each other within the same 15-minute span, perhaps, right? Or half an hour or something. Like it's just really important to always sort of weave that sexual tension in and continue to flirt with your partner. And specifically, it's not all about kisses and hugs, even though that's really sweet. You want to be able to turn it up and get, more sort of frisky and taboo with each other, because once you're in a committed relationship, you should have that level of intimacy and trust where you feel comfortable to express yourself. There's no reason to hold back once you're in a committed relationship. I mean, I absolutely advocate for a committed relationship, an exclusive one. Now, me too. There are obviously ethical, non-exclusive relationships that work, and that's fine if that's what you believe in. I don't mind working with people who are going to approach non-exclusivity ethically, which means being upfront and honest from the get-go. But generally speaking, I'm talking about exclusive relationships between heterosexual men and women. But I also work with non-heterosexuals. So getting back to that, so you might have a sex drive that's really amped up and you want it constantly. And usually that's the man. And then you might have a sex drive that's kind of lagging and slacking, and maybe here and there, or maybe it takes a little bit of effort. And so these are the couples that end up working with me, and I have to really confront some of these issues. What's going on here? Are you not attracted to this person? Let's be honest. Or if you want to work on it and make this relationship last, then you're going to have to confront some of these issues. Maybe it's you're not taking care of yourself. You need to go and get more fit in the gym, or be more active, take better care of your appearance, put a little bit of makeup on, do your hair a little bit, wear some nice clothes, and, pleasure your partner. I find this is something that a lot of women these days have a hard time with. And it's really important, and this goes back to the complementarity and the polarity, that a woman who is not comfortable pleasing her man is going to create difficulties in a relationship. That's going to contribute to a power struggle. So it should bring you pleasure to pleasure your partner, but that goes for men as well. Men should absolutely, enjoy pleasuring their woman just as much as the woman should enjoy pleasuring her man. So sex is really important. You can call it the glue of the relationship. I like to call it the life vest of the relationship. So whenever there's any kind of conflict or lull or something that whatever, it could be noticeable, one or both of you are able to sort of turn on that sexuality and everything's fine. It's just sort of that life vest that floats everything to the surface, and you can kind of connect and get a little titillation and feel good and intimate with each other. And that's really, really key to a successful relationship. Absolutely. You cannot negotiate the sexual chemistry between two people, but you can put effort into it. So that means you can schedule sex if you need to, if the children are young and getting in the way, you're busy at work, but you have to prioritize it. It has to be important to you. You have to put other things aside. And especially like if you're tired, if you're lazy, if you're any of those things that create barriers to you putting in the time to be sexual with your partner, you need to take a long, hard look at that. Like, what is going on? Why are you being selfish? Why are you not prioritizing it? What's lacking? What's really underneath that? Because if you really are into your partner, you're going to want to do that. It's going to be not just enjoyable in a physical way, but it's something that's going to give you some kind of spiritual fulfillment. It's like, I know this word might put some people off, but it's like a service that you feel good. It's like a purpose. You're bringing happiness to your partner, but that brings happiness to you. So it's a cycle of positivity in your relationship. If you live together, it's your home. So you want to contribute that positive energy, whether it's sex, whether it's love, whether it's service, whether it's, doing stuff like cooking and cleaning and whatnot, making each other feel good, right? So it's very, very important as well. So that's number 5, I believe. Now, number 6 and number 7 are close to each other. So that's what I wanted to talk about them together, right after each other. So let's go with jealousy. This has been brought up a little bit lately as well. So jealousy is a tricky one. You don't want too much, but you also can utilize just enough of it. So if you define jealousy, we were having an argument, a discussion on Twitter, disagreement about how to define and differentiate jealousy from envy. So typically speaking, jealousy is like, when we talk about relationship context, it's you seeing your partner around other opposite sex people and feeling like somewhat threatened by it, right? So I don't know if you can sort of guess. Number 7 is trust, but trust does have to do with this, right? But jealousy is its own kind of thing because it can be used as a tool to really ignite a little bit of that spark in just the right amounts. And it's healthy to know that your partner, cares enough that they're keeping their eye on you. And I think that's really all it's about. Not because they don't trust you, hopefully, but maybe they don't trust somebody else. Or maybe they just recognize that they can't take it for granted. And that's very healthy for each partner to recognize this isn't something to be complacent about. Your long-term relationship is not a destination. You need to be investing into it at all times, being the best version of yourself and being the best partner that you can be. And I wrote a tweet the other day. Oh gosh, I should have pulled it up. Maybe I'll put a link to it in the notes below. But it was basically along the lines of, there are no guarantees in relationships. You can't get a promise of fidelity. You can't get a promise that this is going to be a lifetime partnership. The only way to get even remotely close to a guarantee that this relationship is going to last, whether it's a marriage or not, and this person is not going to be unfaithful, is if you constantly put your effort and attention into making it the best relationship ever, and for you to be the best partner that you can be. That's the only and the best thing that you can do. And I promise you, your relationships will vastly improve if that's your attitude. So jealousy is kind of like an offshoot of that. Like once you recognize, well, it's not like a given, it's not a guarantee that this person is going to be in my life tomorrow. If I drop the ball, then if you notice that they're getting attention from someone else and you want them to be that great that people do notice them, but when you notice it, it should kind of give you a little bit of a reality check, I would call it. So just enough that the jealousy is a reality check, but not too much jealousy that it becomes a lack of trust. So that's how I would summarize that. Let's put a bookmark right there, and because I don't really want to get into the dread thing. That's another element of that some people use that as a strategy to sort of contrive that a little bit. But I just want to talk about it the way that I did in regards to natural jealousy, not intentional jealousy, but recognize that it is just in a very sort of small dosage that it can be useful. Don't go overboard. And don't get complacent. Make sure that you recognize that you have to put the relationship first. And it's not working hard at it, but it's prioritizing it and making sure that you don't take it for granted. So I know we're already at over 30 minutes, so let me get to the last one. So the last one is trust and loyalty. So this is obviously that kind of the quintessential issue, the pitfall of bad relationships, the ones that are deceitful, the ones that are disloyal, and someone's cheating, or maybe it's not even about cheating yet, but there's a lack of trust. So whatever it was that happened, maybe you got caught in a lie, maybe you just, there's some sort of disconnection or detachment between the partners, and it's created this distrust. I mean, granted, it could also be the person, him or herself, whether it's the man or the woman, bringing baggage into this relationship with each other, that they're just a distrusting person. I wouldn't call them damaged, but I would absolutely say that they're wounded. And so if they're not willing to do the work to examine that just tendency to be mistrusting, this is going to sort of unravel the relationship rather quickly, and it could lead to your worst case scenario, which is your fear sabotaging your relationship of being cheated on and having a disloyal partner. And the thing is that once it gets to that point, it's so hard to repair it. So you really want to prevent that from happening. So if you are, having difficulty with trust, get in with someone, whether it's me or whether it's someone else in your hometown, face to face, that's fine. I just really want to encourage couples to try to prevent problems before they get really, really big, because usually it's way too late by the time you seek help. So make sure that you do the individual work first before you get into a serious relationship. You need to really make sure that you don't have these glaring wounds or heavy baggage that you're taking into your relationship, because it will affect it. But generally speaking, just in regards to trust, the approach that I take, because I work with a lot of people and I talk often about the dating scene and how to vet for the right partner. So I've moved from being a marriage therapist, and my PhD is in marriage, couples, and family counseling. But I've moved away from focusing on married couples to focusing more on prevention. So I found that it was a lot harder to save marriages that basically were in a worst case scenario than help people date properly so that they find the best partner for them, and they make sure and do the work on them as well before they find that person. So when you're single, work on yourself. Use that time. Prepare yourself for a long-term relationship before it happens. And you know what? That's actually going to attract it to you anyway. So that's definitely a good way of going about utilizing your time when you're single, rather than obsessing about how do I meet this person. So that's not going to work. And that was the other thing I was going to say earlier is you need to develop your ideal self, attract your ideal partner, and create your ideal life. And you might do the creating the ideal life in conjunction with your ideal partner, but it absolutely starts with yourself and making sure that you're the best version of yourself, and working on your weaknesses, developing your strengths, identifying your values, your belief systems, and just improving everything, like making sure that that you're healthy, that you're active, that you're focusing on all the things that are important as a partner in order for you to contribute to the wellness and the well-being and happiness of another human being, whether it's just a partner or children. So lots to consider. But getting back to that, sorry, I keep sort of segueing. In regards to trust, when you're dating in the very beginning, you give trust to get trust. It's so important for you to not hoard trust or not make it conditional. If you make it conditional, it's never going to work, and it's just going to compound in distrust and chaos and questioning and security. You need to develop that secure attachment with a partner. So you can't be afraid of intimacy. You can't be afraid of attachment when you're going into a serious relationship. So even if the situation is ambiguous, you have to give it reasonable doubt. Do not distrust a person before they prove to you that they've done something wrong. Now, if that seems counterintuitive to you because you're ridiculously guarded, then I really advise you to seek me out and let me work with you, and maybe there's some stuff that you're not seeing that I could help you work through. But a lot of people are searching for that reassurance. They want that guarantee that nothing is gonna go wrong, that it's not a risk. That is unrealistic. Like I said before, it's going to be a risk. There's no reward without the risk, but it just is. It's not logical to expect a guarantee that it's going to last forever and nothing bad is going to happen. So give the trust, give the exclusivity. Once you know you have the logic, you have the desire, you have the love, and that partnership is, you're escalating it. It keeps passing through all the layers of the vetting. Just be there in it with the trust. And you're basically investing in the best case scenario for your relationship. So then you don't have any regrets later on. But if you build it on a shaky foundation, then it could very likely tumble towards the end. And then trying to repair that is often not the easiest. It can be possible, but why even go there? So let's all work on prevention. Let's all work on avoiding these pitfalls of bad relationships and work on developing healthy, successful relationships. So thank you for joining me this evening. I'm going to be doing these weekly love streams on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So don't forget to like the video. I see a couple likes, thank you. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. But please, if you don't comment below, you can always reach out to me privately if you want to share anything that you'd rather, just be between us. All right, guys. Thank you. Ciao.